Can you hear me okay?
I can. It's a little, maybe a little quiet.
Is that better?
That is better, yeah.
Okay. I'll just talk loud. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Looks like we'll be getting started in about another minute or so.
Okay, perfect.
Waiting for Keith to call in, and here he is.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Hi, Keith.
Okay. I can hear you
Keith,
well, yeah. Just a real quick test since we're about ready to start, just in 1 minute here. Waylon, you can hear both of us okay?
Yep.
Okay. How do the volumes sound, Waylon, compared to Keith Rosen and myself?
I think you might be a little bit louder, but we're good enough. I can hear fine.
Okay. Okay, anything we need to do just as far as presenters and participants here? Any questions, Waylon or Keith, before we get started? Or are we just waiting for it?
None on my end. I just want to make sure I'm coming in clear.
Sound good. Okay. Well, we'll just go ahead and get started then. Do you clicked record, so we're recording this as well. So welcome to Coachquest Live, everybody. I'm Keith Nurden. I'm going to be moderating this session here. And you know Keith Rosen, I'm sure, the person in the upper left. He's the one going to be providing the coaching today. He is the author of the best-selling book, Coaching Salespeople into Sales Champions. And also, as of just the other day, very exciting, first time we've announced this publicly, is the author of a new book called Own Your Day. So this is the first printed copy of that book. It is now available for purchase, and it's a time management book for sales leaders. So if you go to ownyourday.com, you can either get a couple free chapters to check it out, or you can purchase the book there. So with that, also wanted to introduce our guest, Waylon McGill. Thanks for joining us, Waylon.
Happy to be here.
And Waylon is the manager of sales development at Clio out of Toronto. So he's joining us in Toronto. Keith Rosen is joining us out of New York, and I'm in Washington State. And so you're the manager of sales development at Clio, and Clio is a company that provides legal practice management software. Is that correct?
Yeah, you could sort of think of it as like Salesforce for lawyers, cloud-based, everything they need in one place.
Okay. Well, perfect. Thanks so much for being willing to do this, Keith. And also, Waylon, thank you very much for joining us for this. And with that, we're going to go ahead and get started. We're going to keep the introductions really short. We're going to dive right into some live coaching. And with that, I'm going to turn the time over to you, Keith and Waylon.
Okay.
Thank you, Keith Nurden. So Waylon, welcome. Thanks for the opportunity to be coaching you today. So let's go ahead and dive into it. What would make our time today really useful? What topics?
So I got a couple, but why don't we start off with one, which is, and let me set the background for you. So I manage a sales development team. We are responsible for calling inbound leads, qualifying them, and trying to push them through the funnel. And then we pass them off to an account executive team that's responsible for closing. I report directly to the VP of sales, and so do the managers who manage the account executive teams. My role, or my team members all have, a fairly junior sales role, and the idea is that we're prepping them to become account executives. That's what everybody's goal is. And so as a leader, my goal is to help them get there. The problem is, I need to go to my manager. He's my leader sometimes with things where it might not look so good on one of my people. There might be a coaching opportunity with one of them, and I might not be fully capable of doing that myself. But if I come to him about it, I'm exposing weakness for a member of my team. And when potential account executive jobs come up, he'll be aware of that weakness, and I'm concerned that will prevent them from getting promotions that they might get if all I did was tell him the great things they're doing and leave out the rest.
Okay, thanks. So are you open to exploring how we can create a new possibility around this? Super. So can you walk me through a specific scenario first where you did have a conversation with your VP?
So I have one rep, and in his case, he was not doing, like, our job is to qualify well, and I felt that he was not doing a very good job of qualifying. He was focused on more things like optics within the company, networking with the right people, getting involved in additional projects and things like that, where that was taking away from his on-the-job performance. And I was hesitant to go bring that to my manager, but I did, and obviously, his opinion on that is that he needs to be focused on his day-to-day. And I'm concerned that later on this comes back, to bite me, that he doesn't have the focus that we require in an account executive.
Got it. So what did that conversation sound like, that interaction, if we're really tactical and on the court here, between you and your boss?
I describe his behavior, and it gets viewed by my boss as being an immaturity thing. Yeah.
Is that what he said?
And it's natural. They are young salespeople for the most part on my team. This individual, I believe at the time, was 24, 25. And so when I position it like this, it's like, this person hasn't been in sales long enough. They haven't been in the business world long enough to really understand. Sure, networking and things like that's important, but really what gets you promoted is excelling at your core functions. And that's something that he's going to need to learn over time.
Got it. Thanks. So in terms of the conversation you're having with your boss, sounds like he responded to you with a couple of concerns.
Yeah.
Is that accurate? Okay. And when you say concern, can you unpack that word for me a little more?
So I think that it was in some sense almost a judgment of this sales development rep, in that they're immature and need a lot of seasoning and you should say business maturity.
Okay, and those are the words that you heard.
Some of those are the words, like immature, first job, doesn't get it, things like that.
And did he follow up with any suggestions or any comments regarding this person's opportunity to be
just
promoted?
That he needs to understand patience, and that needs to realign his expectations with a reasonable time frame for promotion and how long he's been in the role, but also how long he's been selling in general.
Okay. And through this interaction, is this something that you've had over time more than once, these types of conversations?
With the rep or with so at that point, that's when I started thinking maybe I should learn to handle these things without going to him, because I feel like even if it's something that I'm able to work out with my rep where I can get his expectations in line, now when a promotion comes up, that's still a blemish on his record, but it might be something that's not even really a thing anymore.
Got it. So because of that one interaction, you've pretty much made a decision not to approach your boss around these situations, given your concern around how it may impact this person's potential.
I sort of took the view that I won't recommend anyone for promotion who I don't think will excel quickly at the job. So I figure I'll just keep it to myself. I'll work with the individual on it personally, and I just won't recommend them if they're not ready.
So I'm curious, because of that one situation, it sounded like you made a decision. What assumptions might you be making?
So for one, I'm assuming that we won't, like one of my concerns, and there's an assumption built in, is that when we look at external candidates for account executive jobs, is most salespeople are pretty good at presenting themselves in interviews, and you're only going to see the best side of them. You're not going to see the warts that this person has, but if I'm always communicating the warts that my team has, you will see that. So I guess my concern is that we won't properly discount external candidates and think, yeah, I interviewed well, but for sure there's some things beneath the surface that are probably not perfect.
curious if you, so what were the assumptions in there? Just laser them for me real quick.
The AE manager and the VP of sales will not properly discount the fact that an external candidate has problems too that we're just not privy to.
Okay, thank you for that. And just curious here, if you were to switch roles with your VP, how would you see this through his eyes?
I would like it. I would definitely want me to be transparent so that I actually know what I'm dealing with, and I would want me to believe that I will first off take that into account, recognize that the external candidates are not always as great as they seem, and that there's risk there as well. But also that I can't coach my managers as a VP if they're not actually coming to me with, potential coaching moments.
Okay, well, thanks for that. And a couple of those questions, I just wanted for you to expand your peripheral vision, coming from a different place, looking at things through your VP's eyes for a second. Let's get a little into the conversations, because one of the things about coaching and leadership is when you change the conversation, you change the outcome. And I know your overarching concern was, how can you approach your VP, be transparent without making your people look bad? So what do you think a different conversation could sound like?
Are you asking, for example, if I were to take that original scenario with this person and come back, what's a way that I could position it differently maybe?
Exactly.
One way, I guess, would be more just position it in general terms rather than invoking a specific person. If it's something that maybe is common amongst some members of the team, how would I deal with this situation? I've got someone, and just avoid getting into the specifics would be one way. Maybe emphasizing some of the really great things that they are doing, instead of coming to my VP and saying, I want to have a conversation about this and having a challenge with this person. Maybe if I had more regular conversations about all of my people when they were doing great things or not so great things, I could kind of slide it in there, and it doesn't become the focus necessarily in his mind of my current perspective on that person. And it's just one of the little things that we're working on. Okay.
And does your VP have visibility into your reps as well?
Somewhat. I mean, he's around, and, he's, listening often when you think he's not. But he's very much involved in the overall strategy of the company and things like that. So his amount of day-to-day with them is definitely less, and a lot of it's filtered through me.
Okay. So how much visibility do you think he has in terms of him having a grasp on where your people are at in terms of their performance and where they need to grow?
I think he's probably got a better idea of the team collectively rather than of individual differences.
Okay, got it. So let's now look very specifically at what that conversation would sound like, because you sort of gave me a global strategy. Now to convert that strategy into the actual language. So let's say I'm your VP, okay, and you have someone that is vying for a promotion. You see, for example, this person, there's an opportunity for improvement where they can qualify better, as you shared earlier. How can you approach me and, first of all, position the conversation, and then have an open dialogue that won't make that person look bad? Now, again, we're going to be real tactical. I'm your VP, so what's that going to sound like?
Keith, I want to talk to you about John. So, John's doing a lot of great things right now. His numbers are he's excelling in particular areas, and he's doing a lot of other stuff that I think holds value for the company. My concern is that he's not focusing all the time on the right things. And that might be my fault to some extent, but his qualification, I feel, could use work. His close rate on the deals that he sends over to account executives are not as good as some of his colleagues. And I'm just wondering if you've got any ideas of how I could help him recognize that these other things that, might bring value to the company, they're not directly tied to his job performance and evaluation, and they're probably taking him away from areas where he can make a bigger impact and get recognized better.
Okay. So that sounded like a little bit of a different approach than you took earlier. What do you think?
It definitely, it feels different. It takes a lot more thinking. It's not as natural.
Mm-hmm.
My natural tendency is just kind of to want to say, just be very direct and not think about positioning too much. So,
and if I could jump in there, you being direct, it sounded like earlier there's a potential cost that you may incur if you are.
That he's not going to fill in all the blanks of all the great things necessary that this person's doing. He's just going to hear their qualifications not up to where it needs to be, and that's kind of the end of it.
Okay. So I want to go back to a couple of things that you really pinpointed that I didn't hear you say before. I heard you say, part of this is my responsibility. What if you took all responsibility?
I don't know about that. So what do you mean?
Well, you said when I was acting as your boss, I heard you say, well, listen, I have this person. I want to explore some things. Maybe you have some ideas of what he can do to improve. I believe there's an opportunity for him to improve around his qualification. Yeah, I take some responsibility for that. So you kind of glossed over that pretty quickly. However, I think there's a key opportunity there without making you look bad as well. But after all, the success and failure of any team points to
the leader.
Who? Man. Exactly.
So I guess I could take full responsibility. I don't know if I feel 100% responsible. I guess maybe that's part of the problem. Like I certainly feel whenever someone on my team's not doing something the way that they should be, or the way that I think they should be, I definitely feel a significant portion of the responsibility lies with me, and I'm willing to take that. Okay. But I guess my counterpoint would be that I can't be on every call at all times. And so there's certain things that will always be outside of my control. I can prepare people as best I can. And then at a certain point, they've got to do a certain amount of walking, running on their own. Okay.
So let me jump in here. I heard you use the word should. They should be doing things the right way. So what's that whole thing about shoulding on your people there?
I think that you're right. I mean, to some extent, if someone's not doing something the right way, I probably either haven't been 100% clear about either what they should be doing or the importance of doing it.
Okay, so let's go back initially. It's not 60-40, it's not 50-50. 100% accountability falls on the leader. Okay, now good news, okay, every challenge and problem that you run into is your fault. Bad news, every challenge and problem you run into is your fault. Okay? It's a duality there. But think about it. Why did I say it's good news? Because if it's good news, you have 100% control of how you can impact that and change it to create a new possibility. So let's now that I heard your point of view, I heard a different approach that you can take with your boss. We sort of unpacked this idea of being 100% accountable. By the way, how's that landing on you?
It's not awful.
Okay.
I like the locus of control, feeling that, it is, like you said, it's empowering, but at the same time, it's a lot of responsibility.
It is. And it's all about how you position the conversation with your boss. So now that I've heard, again, your point of view, I'm going to fill in a couple of gaps. Is that okay? So let's think about how we can language that. The first thing is, and this is a great opportunity to really set expectations with your boss so that you are clear with your intentions, and as such, he's clear with your intentions so that there's that level of alignment between the two of you. So the first thing is about positioning the conversation, not just jumping in right into it. So what if it sounded like something like, hey, hey boss, hey, what I want for each member of our team and for us is to achieve our sales goals. And I was hoping to explore some ideas with you about Johnny, for example, where we could make Johnny positioned in a way where he's ready to be promoted. So I'm hoping to hear some of your thoughts and ideas. Are you open to talking about that? And of course, he's going to say yes. Now, the first thing is I want to be careful about these assumptions again, because it sounds like you're coming from a place that you're assuming that your VP has no visibility into Johnny's weaknesses. So what if we ask him first? So, boss, what do you think about Johnny? What's your perception of Johnny at this point? How much do you know about Johnny and his performance?
Yeah.
So do you see what I'm doing now? I'm closing that gap. I'm not making assumptions. I'm assessing how much my boss knows and how much he doesn't know. I'm also uncovering how accurate he is in terms of his perception of Johnny and his performance. So once I have that, then we can start opening the dialogue further and say, boss, one of the things that I do when I look at my team is take 100% responsibility for them and their success. And given that, I see there's a couple of opportunities for Johnny to improve, specifically around qualification. So do you have any thoughts about what I can do personally as his manager to help Johnny become more effective and successful at qualification?
Yeah, I like that.
What do you think of that?
Really, it almost shields them entirely. It put like the conversation in some way becomes about me and how I can be better rather than a focus on how my reps can be better. So I do like that. I feel like I could do that. Like as soon as the sort of light bulbs went off even before you repositioned it after you said that, I started realizing, okay, so I take responsibility for this. How can I be better such that, Johnny has an opportunity to reach his potential?
Spot on. So you think you have a better approach now when going into your boss's office and having these conversations?
Yeah, I think the one thing it's interesting that you mentioned as well that I just honestly never thought to do was ask about his perception on where he sees them at individually in terms of their development. And maybe if he thinks that, that John is great in a lot of ways, then I don't have to be as concerned as well. I can still take the accountability, but I can do that, with confidence that this is not something that's going to derail John's career aspirations.
Yeah, and it's not a weakness. It's an opportunity for improvement, but avalanches roll downhill. So it starts from the top, it starts with you. So I'm curious, how is this conversation landing on you at this point? If we start wrapping it up.
What do you mean by that? I mean,
well, how are you feeling about what new possibilities did we open up here?
So for one, I mean, I feel like I can use that technique and actually, I feel like I can do that. So like when I have people issues now, I don't feel that I need to be concerned. If I position it right, I put the blame on myself, that I can, do that without hurting my team. I try to take different perspective on things generally, but I think, really appreciating the perspective that he would have is important there, and maybe something that, I did only partially before and saw it as something that I didn't necessarily have to correct for. So I didn't necessarily have to make a change based on what he would want. So that's a change. And then I think those are the key takeaways.
All right. And now you're not pointing the finger at your directs, you're pointing it at you. And that's something you have control in. So good work. Action steps. What's the next step for you?
So actually what I'd like to do is have individual conversations with my manager focused on each one of my people, starting off with getting his perceptions on them. And to do that, I'm going to prepare well in advance, have numbers and everything else ready so that I'm able to either, confirm or disconfirm his perception on various things, and sort of figure out, do I have specific issues here, or maybe things that are just above my level of expertise and scope that he could help with, and have my positioning ready in advance so that these delicate, potentially delicate conversations are handled well.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is if I follow up with you in about, I don't know, 2 weeks or so, at that point you'll have had some new conversations with your boss.
At least for a couple people.
So is it all right if I'm your accountability partner on this and follow up with you to hear how it went? Okay, well, thank you for that. Is this a good place to wrap up this topic, Waylon? Okay. So I'm going to turn it over to Keith Nurdin. Keith, comments, observations, and do we have time for a second
24 minutes after 10 o'clock. So we'll chat about a couple things here, some observations. Welcome any questions from the audience at this point as well. But a couple of observations that I had was, I don't know if the other people watching or Waylon, if you noticed, how many times Keith used the phrase, "I'm just curious here." I counted at least 4 times where he used it, and it wasn't because he had scripted that out. It was because, I'm sure you sense that was genuine curiosity and the power that genuine curiosity plays in coaching. I mean, did you? So that was one thought that I remember when Keith was coaching me, that genuine sense of curiosity always leads to uncovering things.
Yeah, there's never any question that made me feel defensive in any way. Right.
Good. Yeah. So one thing is that good coaching should always feel great, and that's always a good barometer, something that's stuck in my mind. And when I hear you talking about light bulbs going off and these different feelings and not feeling defensive, that's what was happening. Go ahead.
And of course, Keith, if it doesn't feel great, they're not coaching effectively, right?
Yeah. So kind of along the lines of there's no such thing as a difficult conversation. If it's approached properly and delivered well, then really any conversation can go well. And then just several times, I just want people to make sure they recognized how long Keith would pause after he asks questions, even difficult questions. The difficult question about the what if you took 100% accountability. He was willing to ask that and watch you kind of internalize that and process it without jumping in with another explanation. So that's another tip that I want to make sure is in people's line of vision as well. The other thing that I want to ask you, Waylon, real quick here, that I think would be valuable for people who are watching. I remember when, as a manager, as a leader, when you're being coached by Keith, there's 2 different levels of learning, I'm sure, that you were picking up on. One being the specific things that he was coaching you about, how to, some new strategies, possibilities for how to deal with these situations. But he's also modeling how to coach. And so was there anything about how he coached you that you could pick up on that you want to then model with your people that wasn't necessarily what he was coaching you about, but maybe some certain strategies or techniques or things that he used? Anything that came to mind for you?
Yeah. So, I read Coaching Salespeople and the Sales Champions. That's why I was eager to do this. And that's, that's kind of what I used as my framework for how I approach coaching. But I think part of that, there's a difference between reading and experiencing. And I think that something that I could work on that I've learned from this experience is that I probably do sometimes make people feel defensive. Like it's not the norm, but I have had conversations with people where after the fact I asked, to chat and say, it felt like you were defensive there. What could I maybe do differently to make you not feel that way? And maybe part of it just comes down to tone, that my tone, I think sometimes it comes off less, like maybe it should come off a little bit softer than it does. And it's not the intention behind it, but you're communicating so much through your voice. And I think my voice sometimes is just a little less finesse than Keith has.
So along with tone, and just to build on that, and I appreciate that observation, Waylon, and Keith, thank you for your thoughts as well. There is something else in there. If you notice, when people are defensive, it's often because they don't understand your intentions in a conversation. And especially if you're the boss approaching them, the default file for human beings
Yeah.
is so
No, I was just going to say,
if you're going to them.
No, I was going to say, I think that's it, like where occasionally I can sort of see it in their eyes that they think I'm trying to trap them or something like that.
So let's pause on that. What does that tell you right there? What does that signal?
They don't feel entirely safe.
Okay. And why is that? Why don't they feel safe?
I think part of it's the nature of the relationship. Where, you know, if I've got a boss and he like sends me a quick text that says, call me, there's going to be some element that's like, oh, I wonder if this is good or bad, you know?
So basically, call me means, uh-oh, what did I do wrong? Am I getting fired? Where did I mess up? Am I getting yelled at? Where did I make a mistake? So again, to your point, illustrating what I shared earlier is when we are not clear with our intentions, when we don't create alignment and set expectations in a conversation, people's default is fear. And it doesn't matter if it's your directs. It doesn't matter if it's you. It doesn't matter if it's your VP when they answer to the CEO. People default to fear. So, and that works with sales as well. When salespeople don't get a call back, where do they go? Oh, I guess the customer is not going to buy. I guess they bought from somewhere else. I guess I messed up. They're not interested. When maybe the customer's just on vacation for a week. So it reinforces the importance of, even when you're going to the conversation with your VP or even with your directs, to set the intention. Say, and here's what I'm doing. Here's why we're doing it. And here's what's in it for you. That is the framework right there for enrollment. And when you align people's personal goals with the business objectives, now you have a shared vision and a shared focus where there's level of alignment and people understand.
Yeah, I think that honestly would probably resolve most of it. Like I said, it's like when I ask the question, they think that I'm trying to catch them in something potentially. And then once that fear goes up, obviously defensiveness is going to come with it. And if I just sort of set expectations, like, because what I'm thinking about is right when someone gets off a phone call, for example, like, I have my team all around me, and I'll, maybe start by asking them, what do you think you could have done differently on that call? And they might, and sometimes, the thought from them is certainly like, oh, obviously he thinks I should have done something differently.
That's right. Exactly. So it's kind of a loaded question.
And I don't set the expectation. I just kind of like pop my head up over the desk, and it's just like, what could you have done differently?
So interesting, because in this dialogue, even in our debrief, we've uncovered another coaching moment here, where when you're observing your people, going back as a central theme, they need to understand, okay, why is my boss observing me? Is it because I'm in trouble? Is it because I'm not performing? Is it because they're looking to corner me? So again, setting those expectations, just like, a coach in sports is on the sidelines observing the players play, that's your role. And when you share that analogy, for example, with sports, that's bulletproof. Is that, every great athlete has a coach on the sidelines observing them, because the athletes can't self-diagnose when they're in the middle of the game. And that holds true with salespeople as well. When you're on a call, you're focused on, creating that opportunity, creating that sale. You're not self-diagnosing. So my role is to ensure that you're taking the steps to be as successful as you can in your role. So are you open to some feedback, given what I just heard on that last call? You hear how you positioned it, you set the expectation, what's in it for them, and then got permission to share your observations. And the first question is not going to be, so what could you have done differently? Because that implies they didn't do it right. How about, so how do you think that call went?
And should I start off by asking permission before I ask them that? Like, is it okay if we discuss that call? Then yes, okay. How do you think that call went?
How do you think that call went? What did you exactly? What did you think you did well? Where do you think you got stuck? What opportunities are there for improvement? Okay, what could you do differently the next time? So these are not loaded questions. These are open-ended questions that don't have any judgment around them. And by creating that intention and setting expectations up front, they know where you're coming from. They understand what your intentions are doing this debrief, and the questions you're asking and not putting them on the defensive. Once you now know what they know and what they saw, then you could fill in the gaps. Because if you start sharing your observations up front, they may already know that. And now you're being redundant. So it's kind of counterintuitive, but healthy observation, when you're debriefing and giving feedback, it starts with a self-assessment for that person to look in the mirror and self-assess with the questions that you're asking. Then once you understand what they saw, you also know what they didn't see. And that's what you share with them because that's your value.
I was thinking if I only do this when there's something I want them to do differently, then I feel like becomes like all this great expectation setting becomes kind of moot, because after a week or two, you're like, oh, he's asking me if we can discuss that call. Next, he's going to ask me what I thought I did well, and then we're going to talk about what he really wanted to talk about.
So what assumption are you making right here?
That my reps will notice the pattern that I only want to talk about calls where I think they could have done something differently.
And now let's go back again, what we just explored. If you set the expectation up front, here's what I'm doing, here's why I'm doing it, and here's what's in it for you, they're not going to go to that place, which, by the way, you're assuming they are. So now they understand, okay, so I understand what Waylon's doing. Is it okay that once you set that expectation and you're doing consistent observation, that they know which questions you're going to ask?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably helpful, actually. They can sort of get into that mindset.
Yeah, and what if they start answering the questions even before you start asking them? Hey, Waylon, you know what? I know you're going to ask me. Let me tell you what I did well. Let me tell you where I could improve. Let me tell you where I got stuck. Is that a bad thing? Because it sounds like the thing that was missing before, which you created, is a safe place for them to be fully transparent with you, knowing that you're there to support them unconditionally. So how's that?
That's very helpful. I think it's just good. I can have a consistent way that I frame it, which, I really believe in the importance of habits. And if I do it the same way every time, it's easy for me to do it that way, and easy for them to understand expectations and be prepared when they get off a call, knowing that there's a good chance that they're going to be asked those things.
Yeah. And more so, just like, when the coach calls a player off the field, players got to listen to their coach, right? Why?
Partly because, you weren't in the heat of the moment, so you're able to get a better perspective.
And are they open to listening to their coach? Why is that?
There's trust there, and both it from believing that you've got their back, your best or their best interests are at heart, but also that you've been there, done that, and you've got a pretty good grasp of the situation.
Very interesting. So isn't there a level of consistency and overlap in what a coach does for sports and what you're looking to create with your team? You just said it. There's trust. The players know the coach's intention is just for them to get better and better their best. So there's that openness, there's that trust, there's that willingness to hear the feedback. But that couldn't be created unless the coach set that expectation up front.
One thing, if I can interject here real quick, just to point out, is that this is a great example of the power of coaching. This, I don't believe, was a topic that was that you had expected discussing today, but it's a great example of how coaching creates new possibilities, and how when Keith goes in, he did not have an agenda when he started this call. Like, okay, I got to figure out how to position this call so that I can get to the end with having Waylon say this, right? He did not have that agenda. When you go in without an agenda, with a genuine desire to coach and help your people, new possibilities open up. And that's exactly what happened here. And so it's just kind of nice to see an actual example of that. One thing I just wanted to add real quick to what you were discussing was the power of kind of the most powerful coaching statement ever, is one of Keith's blog articles, which is the wanting for statement, and how when you understand the unique what motivates each person on your team uniquely, you can use and leverage that wanting for statement as you enroll them in each conversation and as you wrap up those conversations. Like, okay, well, what I was wanting for you is to feel like you had the support you needed to be able to achieve the goals so that you can get the promotion that I know you said you wanted, and I'm here to support you with that. And if you lead with that, and if you wrap up with that, then it's going to make them a lot less defensive as well.
And I think, Keith, just to build off what you said, you mentioned earlier, there's no such thing as a difficult conversation, which is something I wholeheartedly coach and train leaders on. Because if you're setting the right expectation up front, it could even be dealing with an underperformer. Once people understand your intentions are pure, once they understand you're there to support them unconditionally, they're going to open up, and that stimulates that law of reciprocity. When you're opening up with them and you're clear with your intentions, they're in turn going to open up, and that develops that level of trust that every leader desperately wants and needs to create amongst their team.
Okay.
So I think at this point, Keith, it's probably a good time for us maybe to start doing a little bit of a wrap up.
Yeah. That's a great point to push pause on this. We're about 3 minutes in. We haven't had any questions from the audience at this point, but that's okay. We've had some really good additional things that we've uncovered and discussed at the end of this. So we can go ahead and conclude here, unless there's anything pressing, Waylon or Keith, that you wanted to add just before we wrap up.
No, I'm good. I think that was really valuable. I'm really glad that was recorded, because I think that there's really a lot there. I mean, that's very brief. Overall, we'll probably spend just over 30 minutes, but I could probably spend a few hours going over that and really coming up with action plans and specific steps that I need to take to incorporate this stuff into my my overall approach.
So if I emailed you what we talked about today in a document where how you can set up expectations around observation, as we just explored, and the questions that help people self-assess, would you commit
absolutely.
to using them? Okay. Well, great. So then my homework is I'm going to send you those tools, and then we're going to follow up in a couple of weeks to see how it went in terms of how it changed the dynamic between you and your directs, how it changed what they're willing to share and how they're willing to open up, and how it also eliminated that wall that people often put up when their boss is looking to debrief with them, because they're thinking, uh-oh, they're looking for something bad. Yeah. They're going to hold it against me.
Okay, great. That'd be awesome.
All right.
Okay.
You got it. Well, I want to thank you, Waylon, for being open and volunteering to be the coachee today. It's certainly been a pleasure working and collaborating with you, and I'm glad to hear that you got some value that you were looking for and value that you weren't even looking for today.
Okay. Yeah.
So I'm going to turn it over to Keith Nurdin. And Keith, any final words? Anything you want to wrap up or share with those that are observing?
Thank you so much, Waylon, for doing this. Although it is good coaching, it's a little different format where you're putting yourself out there for the world to see. So we really do appreciate you very much being willing to do that. What's that?
So there are people watching this.
Yes, surprise. You're live.
Just 3,000. That's all.
Yeah. No, so again, thank you, Keith and Waylon, for this great coaching session, for everybody who's tuned in, and for whether it's now or later. I know that we got a lot of feedback, people that they weren't able to attend live, but they're really looking forward to watching this later, and I really hope they do, because it's great. And just a reminder, here's the plug, is brand new book just out, Own Your Day. You can go to ownyourday.com. It's a time management book for sales leaders. And just a reminder, in case people aren't sure how it works, that Waylon is a member of the Coachquest LinkedIn group, and that's the group that we pull from to have to invite to receive this free live coaching from Keith Rosen. So I'll go ahead and put a link in here to that. I'll just save that there to the group. If you're interested in joining that group, then we notify them and invite them to participate in these sessions. But other than that, that's all I have. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, everyone. And we'll go ahead and conclude this session of Coachquest Live.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Take care.